Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dives from the Morse Global Finance podcast team. I'm John, and with me as always is Tiffany,
Hey, everybody.
our expert guide for today's journey. We're diving into some sources that you sent us about Midas Gold Group, a company piquing a lot of curiosity these days.
That's right.
They're all about precious metals, particularly gold and silver, and how they might offer a different path to safeguarding and growing your wealth.
Yeah, we've got a fascinating mix of material here. Their own website, details on their radio show, The Gold Standard, even some customer reviews. It paints an interesting picture, and I think there's a lot to unpack for our listener today.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. What is Midas Gold Group, and what are they actually offering?
Well, they're a company that's been around since 2010, with offices in Arizona and Thousand Oaks, California. Their bread and butter is gold and silver. They sell the physical stuff, bars, coins, you name it. But they also help people set up these things called gold IRAs, which are basically retirement accounts, but with precious metals instead of stocks.
Ugh, gold IRAs. I've heard whispers about those, but honestly, they sound a bit intimidating. Is that something Midas Gold Group tries to make easier?
They do. In fact, they really lean into the educational aspect. They've got this radio show, The Gold Standard,
Yeah.
where they make the case for why precious metals, especially gold, are essential for weathering economic storms. They bring up things like the 2008 crash,
Right.
how folks who held gold back then did okay, and how inflation keeps eating away at the value of paper money. It's a narrative that speaks to a lot of people who are, let's say, a little wary of the traditional banking system.
Right, that makes sense. So they're tapping into this idea that gold is a safe haven, something tangible and real when the world feels shaky. But honestly, isn't that what every gold dealer says? What makes Midas Gold Group stand out?
Yeah. Well, that's where it gets interesting. They hammer home this idea of personalized service. They claim to have experts on hand who will actually talk to you, figure out what your goals are, not just try to shove the most expensive product down your throat. And they even offer to appraise any gold or silver you already own, which I thought was a nice touch.
That's pretty cool, actually. Sort of like a gold checkup to see what you've got.
Exactly. And on top of that, they're based in Arizona, which means no sales tax on your purchases. Now, that could be a pretty big deal depending on how much you're buying.
Okay, so they've got the personal touch,
Mm.
a good location,
hmm
and they seem to really know their gold. But what about the actual stuff they're selling? Is it just your run-of-the-mill gold bars? Or do they have something special going on?
Actually, they seem to have a pretty diverse range. Of course, you've got your standard bars and coins, but they also boast about having rare collectibles from all the big mints. The U.S. Mint, the Royal Canadian Mint, the real deal. Sounds like they're catering to both serious investors and maybe those who just want a cool, unique piece of history.
All right, so they're trying to cover all the bases. That makes sense. But one thing that always pops into my mind with precious metals is security. It's not like stocks. You've got this physical thing that people might want to steal. How does Midas Gold Group handle that whole aspect, both for buying and selling?
That's a really important question, and they seem to address it head on. When you buy from them, they promise fast and secure delivery. Everything is discreetly packaged, fully insured, so you don't have to worry about your package screaming valuable gold inside. And they even offer a buyback guarantee if you decide you want to sell your gold back to them. They say they'll buy it at the current market rate. No questions asked.
That's interesting, the buyback thing. So it's not like you're stuck with this gold forever if you change your mind or need the cash.
Right. And it goes back to that theme of personalized service. They seem to be emphasizing flexibility and making the whole experience as easy as possible for the customer.
Okay, so far they're sounding pretty good. But let's be honest, every company puts its best foot forward on its website and marketing materials. What's the real story? What are people saying about Midas Gold Group out in the wild, so to speak?
Well, that's where things get a bit more nuanced and, frankly, a bit more intriguing for us as investigators. They've got tons of positive reviews, especially on Google My Business. Both their locations are rocking a 4.8 out of 5-star rating, which is pretty impressive. People seem to genuinely love their customer service and appreciate their educational approach.
That's a good sign. But you know what they say? Where there's smoke, there's fire. Any negative whispers out there? Anything that gives you pause?
There are a few things, actually. They've got an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau, which is great, but their average customer review score on that platform is a bit lower, like a 2.82 out of 5.
Whoa, that's quite a difference. What's going on there? Are people just harsher critics on the BBB website?
It seems there are some negative reviews, including some pretty serious allegations of unethical practices. A former employee has been quite vocal, claiming the company is in financial trouble and that some customers have lost their savings.
Wow. Okay, that's definitely concerning. Has Midas Gold Group responded to these allegations at all?
Not that we could find, at least not publicly, which, doesn't necessarily mean they're guilty of anything,
Yeah.
but it does raise some questions.
It definitely does, and it highlights why it's so important for our listener to do their own digging. We're just laying out the information here. But ultimately, it's up to you to decide if you feel comfortable with Midas Gold Group.
Absolutely. Don't just take our word for it, or anyone's word for it, really. Look into their history, check their regulatory compliance, understand their fee structure, all of that.
Right? Due diligence is key,
Hmm.
especially when we're talking about something as important as your finances. Now, before we get too deep into the weeds with all that, let's circle back to those gold IRAs for a minute. They seem to be a big part of what Midas Gold Group offers.
Yeah.
But I'll admit I'm still a bit fuzzy on how they actually work.
Okay, so a gold IRA is essentially a self-directed IRA, meaning you have more control over what assets you hold. Instead of traditional stocks and bonds, you're holding physical gold or other precious metals. It's seen as a way to diversify your retirement portfolio and potentially hedge against things like inflation or a major economic downturn.
Okay, that makes sense. But setting up any kind of IRA can be a headache. Is that something Midas Gold Group actually helps you with?
They do. They really emphasize making the process as straightforward as possible. They say they'll walk you through every step from choosing a custodian to actually funding your account and selecting the specific metals you want to hold.
Well, out of custodian. What's that? It sounds like a character from a Harry Potter novel.
Good point. It's not the most intuitive term. Think of a custodian as the vault keeper for your gold IRA. They're a trusted third party, a financial institution that actually holds and safeguards the physical gold.
Okay, so it's not like Midas Gold Group is storing your gold bars under their desks.
Not at all. They recommend a few different reputable custodians, names like Equity Trust Company, Kingdom Trust Company, and a couple others. You get to choose who you feel comfortable with.
So you have options. What about the metals themselves? Are there any restrictions on what kind of gold or silver you can hold in an IRA?
You do have some flexibility there. Midas Gold Group offers a range of coins and bars that are IRA eligible, and they're very upfront about all the fees involved, which is always a good sign.
Transparency is definitely appreciated. Now, I know some people who are really into precious metals like to have at least some of their stash at home, just in case. Is that something you can do with a gold IRA? Can you have a little gold bar tucked under your mattress for emergencies?
That's where things get a little tricky. The IRS has pretty strict regulations regarding the storage of assets held in a gold IRA. Generally, you can't keep those metals at home yourself. They need to be held by an approved custodian, in that secure vault we talked about.
So no burying gold bars in the backyard, even if it makes you feel like a pirate.
Probably not the best idea if you want to stay on the right side of the tax man. But Midas Gold Group can clarify all those regulations for you and make sure you're in compliance.
All right, good to know. So it sounds like they've got all the bases covered when it comes to setting up a gold IRA. But let's be real, not everyone is ready to jump into retirement planning right now. Some folks are just looking for smart ways to manage their money today.
You're absolutely right, and Midas Gold Group seems to recognize that. They also have services for people who want to sell precious metals.
Okay, so it's not just a one-way street. You
Yeah.
can buy from them, but you can also sell to them. What's that process like?
They say they make it pretty painless. They emphasize providing fair and accurate valuations, so you know you're getting a decent price for what you're selling. And they pride themselves on fast payment, usually within a few days, either through bank transfer or a good old-fashioned check.
Options are always good. Anything else stand out about their selling process?
They really stress discretion and confidentiality, which I imagine is important to a lot of people dealing with precious metals. And remember, no sales tax in Arizona, so that's a potential bonus on the selling side as well.
Right, that could add up. Okay, Tiffany, we've covered a ton of ground here. Who Midas Gold Group is, what they offer, the ins and outs of gold IRAs, even how to sell your precious metals if you need to. But before we wrap things up, there's one more piece of the puzzle I want to look at.
All right, what's up?
They offer this free ebook called the 2021 Guide to Owning Bullion and Coins. I'm curious what's actually in this guide, and who do you think would find it most useful?
That's a great question. It seems like this guide aims to be a comprehensive resource for anyone who wants to learn about investing in precious metals. It covers the history of gold and silver as investments, the different types of bullion and coins available, and even strategies for building a well-rounded precious metals portfolio.
So it's like Precious Metals 101.
Exactly. It's geared towards beginners, those who are new to precious metals and want to get a solid understanding of the basics.
I love that. It really reinforces that educational approach they seem to emphasize. But, even with all this information, I think the big question on our listeners' mind is probably, are they legit? With those mixed reviews and allegations floating around, how do we weigh all of this and make a smart decision?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And honestly, there's no easy answer. I think the key takeaway here is that Midas Gold Group presents itself as a solid option for anyone looking to diversify with precious metals, whether that's buying directly or through a gold IRA. But it's crucial to do your own homework.
Right. Look into their history.
Mhm.
See how they handle regulations, what their fees are like.
Compare them to other reputable companies in the precious metals market. Don't just
Right.
rely on reviews. Dig deeper.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Exactly. And this is where that independent financial advisor can come in handy. They can help you figure out if precious metals even align with your overall investment goals and risk tolerance.
Solid advice. It's easy to get caught up in the hype, but taking that step back and getting an objective opinion is always a smart move. Okay, Tiffany, I think we've given our listener a lot to think about today. Any final thoughts before we wrap up this deep dive?
I think the most important thing is to remember that knowledge is power. The more you understand about precious metals and the companies offering them, the better equipped you'll be to make informed decisions.
Couldn't agree more. And speaking of knowledge, don't forget about that free ebook Midas Gold Group offers, the 2021 Guide to Owning Bullion and Coins. It's a great starting point for anyone who wants to explore this world a little further. We'll include a link in the show notes.
Definitely worth checking out. Who knows, you might discover a whole new avenue for building your financial future.
And on that note, we want to hear from you, our listener. Have you considered adding gold or silver to your savings? What are your thoughts on the future of currencies, especially with all this talk about alternative systems? Share your insights with us on social media. We love getting those conversations going.
We're all navigating this complex financial landscape together, so let's learn from each other.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep diving deeper. And we'll see you back here soon for another exploration into the world of finance.